Hi, I'm Ben,
And I'm Josh.
and this is the Bad at Magic podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 19.
Prime numbers, baby. Woo!
And today, I think we're going to talk about life. Last time we talked about games.
Well, why do we have to keep alternating between things that matter and things that don't matter? I don't want to talk about things that don't matter. Life seems like, who cares? Let's talk more about games, Ben.
All right, well, let's follow up on something from last time and talk about something that doesn't matter.
Okay.
So, last time we challenged our listeners to try out the Stanley Parable, which is a game that came out in like 2013 or something like that. It's been a few years, but we've reached a point where games like that don't age terribly poorly. And you and I had kind of had this weird discussion about spoilers last time, and I realized, and it had me think a lot about it, because you challenged me when we talked about Cabin in the Woods, and you're like, why are you being so fastidious about not spoiling Cabin in the Woods? And when I re-listened to episode 18, I realized I was even more fastidious about not spoiling the Stanley Parable, and so I was trying to figure out why I was so fastidious about it.
Well, I know why. And that's because where Cabin in the Woods is like a deliberately B movie with an interesting plot line that people should still go see. Like, if we're going to talk again, we didn't preface like, hey, people, go watch Cabin in the Woods because we're going to talk about it again. Yay! This time we prefaced it. We set an expectation that people were going to go at least check it out or watch it on YouTube for a few minutes before listening to this podcast. And if you haven't done this, by the way, go ahead and pause the podcast, watch a couple of 5-minute YouTube videos about the Stanley Parable, and you'll be better informed for the conversation.
Yeah, so I'm going to give the strongest possible spoiler warning I can give, and here's why. Now that I've pondered this, here's my reasoning. The reason someone might avoid knowing something about some kind of media they're about to consume is because why are we averse to spoilers in the first place? It's because it would change how you experience the media. Knowing something in advance about the media, it changes how you experience it. But I'm going to go one level farther with the Stanley Parable, because with interactive media, it doesn't just change it one-sided, it changes it two-sided. If I spoil Star Wars for you before you watch Star Wars, I didn't change the movie. I only changed your perception of it. But with the Stanley Parable, with an interactive game, knowing about it changes how you interact with it, and it changes the outcome.
That's true. If you know what's coming, like you're saying, especially in the interactive media, you're right. There is an extra level of spoiling that is happening.
So, audience, before we talk about the Stanley Parable, if you have any intention whatsoever of trying it, it's like $9 on Steam. I will put in the show notes, like I always do, a start and stop time for this show segment, and you can skip ahead to the index of this show for the point at which we stop talking about the Stanley Parable, and then you can continue listening from there.
Last chance, people. 3, 2, 1. The Stanley Parable is amazing. What do you think?
Yeah. Okay, so in most first-person shooters, there's a story mode where they have some type of interactive thing where you're supposed to feel like you have freedom, but you also have to consume a story that they had to have planned out in advance.
Right.
And there's this back and forth happening between you, the player, and them as the game designers, where you're trying to explore your way through the story, and they're trying to design in such a way where it doesn't feel like you're on rails, but nothing is going to happen in the game that they didn't think of and plan out.
Yes. Everything in a traditional first-person video game is linear. There is a linear story that is happening, and whether you feel like it or not, you are traveling down a single-lined path. And anybody that's ever played a game like that more than once, like every replay of the game, you feel the walls close in on you a little bit, especially since you know what's coming. Like, you wish you could have a little more lateral freedom to like change what's going to happen next. And this is, like you were talking about, not spoiling the Stanley Parable is incredibly important, because the Stanley Parable is completely and utterly different than that. And even having seen any kind of video or spoiler or having somebody talk to you about it is going to impact the choices that you make in the game. And the game itself is an exploration of all the possible choices that a player could make in such a small space.
That's exactly what it is. And I have played it or watched someone play it probably maybe 20 times. And you can end up all the way down a decision tree to the end of the game within just a couple of minutes. But there's so many. There's so many where, you go to the point in the game where you have your first forked path, and the designers of the game made it in such a way that every forked path has more path you can follow. You don't have to go back to the fork and go down the right path.
Yeah, it's such well-designed game because, if anybody that hasn't played or hasn't watched it, shame on you, because it's an amazing game and you should. The idea is there's just a narrator that's talking about the man Stanley, who just loved to sit at his desk and do his job.
A very charming narrator, by the way.
He is very well read. And apparently Stanley's job is to just sit at a desk in a cubicle, and when instructions on the computer screen come up, he would follow whatever instructions on the computer screen. And one day Stanley went and sat down, and there was no instructions. And then that's where it picks up, and you are now taking over for Stanley. And the narrator starts narrating the decisions that you make. Like, Stanley decided to get up and leave. And you're like, oh, I guess I'm going to leave. And so you turn and you walk out. And then you're playing this game, and he's like, oh, and then Stanley walked down the hall on the left fork to get to the conference room. And then that's the first point that I got to. I'm like, you know what? No, narrator, you're not the boss of me. And then you go to the right, and the narrator has some snarky comment like, well, Stanley took the wrong fork and just ended up taking the longer way to the conference room. And then you end up going around. But then, so it's this whole thing where the narrator slowly morphs into this antagonist, maybe, or you can follow exactly what the narrator does, and there is a neat little storyline that just gets tied up in a few minutes, like Ben is saying. Or he becomes the bad guy, and you're just trying to fight against this box that he's trying to put you in.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, there's so many levels of parable going on here. The first parable is just this worker sitting at a cube, and it says, and Stanley was happy. He's sitting there in his cube, and he's doing what he was told, and it makes him happy. And at the most elemental level, that's what's happening when you consume a first-person shooter. Or there's a story mode. They've designed the story mode out. You have to do the things that they set up for you to do, and you do them, and you're happy.
Well, and it goes so meta, because just saying that, like, and Stanley was happy, that imparts to you, the player, that you're supposed to be happy. You are feeling happy in this moment because your character that you are trying to embody is doing the thing that makes him happy.
Right. So on one level, that's the parable. But it's so much more nuanced than that in the practice of the game, because they do things like one of the fork paths you can go down, you end up in a museum of the game that you're in. And there's like a diorama that's at like 1/10 scale of the game. So you can look down on it and see the map that you just traversed through to get to where you're at. Well,
that's assuming you're talking about the game before you break it. Because there are some forked paths that you can go down where the game just starts flipping out. And then the narrator starts going like, great, you broke the game. You made so many wrong decisions. Everything's broken and we're screwed up. So I don't even know what to do now. And like and that's what's happening. And the whole game is broken, and you go through this little glitchy scenario. And then at some point you just have to restart.
Yeah, it gets loony. I mean, there's like, okay, try this game. Here's a baby about to crawl into a fire. Push the button and the baby won't crawl into the fire. And it's like, yeah, it gets kind of weird.
The narrator gets super antagonistic at one point and respawns you in a room where there's 4 walls, a little tiny nightstand table, and a telephone. It says, all right, let's try this from the top. The phone rang and Stanley answered it. And then the phone starts ringing, and then it comes up on the screen. Press E to answer the phone. And you even have choices in that room.
Right. And again, you can either choose to listen or not to listen, and they planned it out in such a way that it's interactive, so that if you do listen, that takes you down the compliance path, and if you don't listen, it takes you down the antagonist path. But ultimately, every path you can go down, even if you think you're trying to be contrary, you're still doing something they had to plan out and include in the game.
And that's the best part, is because every time you feel like that, like, oh, I'm going to be super clever, and there's no way that they ever thought about this. And they have. And they have multiple endings based around that decision that you think you came up with on your own.
Right. Or you wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah. I mean, super classic game design. Really well done.
I had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to have 2 new people try it. And I'll do this sometimes since it's installed on my computer at my house. If I have friends over and we got a few minutes, I'm like, hey, try this game. So I did it with one of my friends about a year ago and enjoyed it. And a few weeks ago, just as the quarantine was starting to kick off, my sister and her kids were here, and they'd never done it. And it popped in my mind for some reason, so I brought them over to the computer. But I didn't let anyone else see. I brought my sister over, and she sat down and did it, and she did the full compliance path. And I could see on her face that she was like considering, but she was more curious about what the compliance path led to.
Okay.
So she just did the full compliance path. And then when we were done, she was like, I was kind of wondering what would happen. So then she has 2 twin sons, and I sat one of them down at the computer, and I had him give it a shot, and he sat down, and as soon as he got to the first fork, and it said, Stanley went through the door on the left, he went through the door on the right, and he did every single non-compliance decision you could possibly do. I didn't know there were so many. Anytime the narrator said something, he did something different. And my sister kind of looked at me and she put her hands on her hip and kind of rolled her eyes. And she's like, that's kind of indicative of his personality.
Now, that is interesting. Having family members play in sequence like that and then letting them observe the playthrough of other family members.
Yeah.
You can learn something about people.
To see my sister learn about her son.
So how did it go with the non-compliance path? And what was the feedback? I'm more interested in the feedback from your sister after she saw the kind of freedom that she had and didn't. And
we had that discussion about what her son was like, and since he's a twin, it kind of contrasts his personality with his brother. But there was a point where he realized, I could see that he'd realized that in his non-compliance, he was still on rails, and he kind of frowned, and then he was just being silly.
It was just the reverse psychology path that he was on.
Yeah.
Stick it to the man. How old is he? Let me guess. He's 14 or 15.
No.
How old is he?
We're talking about a 10-year-old.
Oh, wow. That's bad. If he's showing that kind of non-compliance already, that bodes poorly.
Let's talk about some bad at parenting.
Oh, rolling right into bad at parenting. So I have a couple of different bad at parenting stories, but so do you. So who wants to go first?
Okay, I'll tell one first. This is just a story I don't know that I've told you. It's kind of a cute story. It's fun. So in 2011, I did a 9-month deployment to Afghanistan in support of the global war on terror. It was in lieu of an army guy, so it was a 6-month deployment to Afghanistan with 2 months of training tacked on the front of it, and potential, like awkwardness in the timing of when I go in and out of theater that meant, get ready to have delays.
Those were
fun. I went to New Jersey in February, and it was bitter cold, and I remember laying in a puddle in the snow trying to zero my rifle and not being able to get a tight enough shot group to zero my rifle because I was shivering so much. And and it only got worse from there. So I ended up in Afghanistan, and I missed my family like you do. And about halfway through my time there, I was just trying to find ways to stay in touch. And in 2011, there wasn't full good connectivity, so it was kind of you had Wi-Fi, but it was really terrible, and you could send emails and stuff. So sometimes I would just try to check in digitally. I'd send my wife emails all the time, and one time I went on Google Maps. She had just come back from a trip where she'd gone out to her mom's house and out to California, and I just wanted to look at the front of the house. Well, little did I know, but the Google Maps car had just gone by our house the week before I went to look at it. I don't know. I don't think I had a reason to believe that it had gone by and that I'd checked. I just happened to check and it had gone by. It has been 9 years since that time, and it hasn't gone by again. So it was really coincidental that it had gone by.
Wow.
So I was kind of zooming virtually down my street, and I got to my house, and I turned to look at my house, and there was problems.
At the house?
Yes, at the house.
Okay.
First of all, the first thing I noticed was a little pink thing in the driveway. The door was closed. Our house opened up to the street, and it was pretty close from the front of the house to the street. And my 3-year-old daughter was roaming around outside in her pajamas with no adults in sight, staring at the Google car. What are you doing, Google car?
So you just had a snapshot of this chaotic moment.
Yeah, my daughter's down there, in the street. And I figured this out on Google Maps. And then after I got over that, then I look over, and my wife hates when I retell this story. I look over, and the grass is dead. Dead as can be dead. She'd gone on that whole trip, and she'd forgotten to turn on the sprinklers, and she didn't want to tell me because I had other things to worry about. So she got back from vacation, the grass, and this was in Colorado. This wasn't oh, just turn the sprinklers on and it'll wake up. It was the lawn needed to be replaced. So found out via Google Maps. I'll put the photo on. I'll put the photo on the Facebook and the show notes.
So how is this bad at parenting? This just sounds like I need a minute to rant to tell a
Go
bad story
ahead.
about my
Go
wife.
ahead. I deserve it. You need to stand up for Alicia here.
Listen, Ben, Mr. Deployed to war, you put all that stuff like right back in your hip pocket because I'm pretty sure your wife had a much tougher deployment than you did. How many kids did you have at the time?
We had 6, and I think there were 2 or 3 in diapers.
Yeah. So really, who went on the vacation here?
Okay. Well, there's a corollary to that. And I'll put the photo in the show notes and the document if I can find it. But I recognize this. I recognize that while she had 3 kids in diapers and I was off, just going to the gym every day and having a predictable work schedule, she was taking care of everything back home, including trying to keep the grass alive and the 3-year-old from wandering out into the street. And she succeeded 99% of the time. So
you left 7 people at home and the only thing that died was the grass? I'd put that in the win column. That's a win.
Well, that didn't make it on her. Okay, so as I was leaving Afghanistan, the Army gave me a commendation medal, a U.S. Army commendation medal, and it came on the form that had like the citation on it. So on the plane ride back, I took the citation form and I rewrote it in the same format to list all my wife's accomplishments, everything she'd done while I was gone. I listed the number of miles she drove, the number of dishes she washed, the number of loads of laundry she did, the number of diapers she changed, the number of grocery trips she did, the number of all the lost sleep that she got, and I listed it the same way that a military decoration sounds. And then when I got to when I got off the airplane and my family was there waiting for me, I called a crowd, and all the people that were on my flight gathered around, and I read the citation.
Oh my goodness!
And I pinned my medal on her.
So that is an incredibly romantic thing that you would see in a daytime TV movie. And I promise you, if I tried to do something to that level of public humiliation to my wife, I would be a corpse before leaving that building.
I'm surprised I didn't tell you that one before.
No, that's a really good one. You had me oh, that's a nice little memento thing, right up until you started calling in strangers to gather around. Everyone gather around while I praise
there was probably
my spouse.
50 people stopped and applauded, and yeah.
That's Ben, look at you. You knew that you were in the hole, didn't you? Like you knew you were showing up, and she was just gonna hand 2 toddlers, and you're like, here, you're driving home.
Sometimes we sing the song of the military spouse kind of vaguely, but it's not vague. It's not vague when I'm in Afghanistan for and gone for 8-9 months when she has 3 kids in diapers. There's a very significant commitment she had to make, and if she was petty and angry and mean and about it, I would not be able to perform my job overseas. But because she was supportive and helpful and pulled her load, I was able to focus on what I had to do over there. So I was more effective in fighting the global war on terror because my wife is a supportive military spouse.
I deployed when I was single. It was super awesome.
Yeah, I took your car.
That has a lot of stories in of itself. We'll save those for another day.
All right, so let's hear your bad at parenting. All
right, so I've got 2. I'm going to start with the simple one, which I thought was hilarious. For some reason, we were at the dinner table the other night, and Carter asked me, the random questions that 6-year-old children, or I'm sorry, he's 8, but that 8-year-old kids have. And he asked me, what would happen if we dropped a giraffe from an airplane? And then...
what?
A giraffe from an airplane.
Oh, a giraffe.
Yeah, a giraffe. What happens if we dropped a large mammal from an airplane? And then my wife and I's obvious knee-jerk response is, well, it'd probably die. And then I thought to myself, this is ringing a tiny bell in the back of my head. And so I turned around because all of our computers are in the house now. So I spun 180 degrees in my chair and I did a quick Google search. And yes, so Kyrgyzstan, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. There's a YouTube channel that does a lot of sciencey questions, hypothetical stuff, and they animate it very well. And they have a great spoken British narrator that talks about this stuff. And they did a video regarding the square cube law, where the video starts with, what would happen if you took a mouse, a dog, and an elephant and dropped them off the Empire State Building? And I just pointed at it, I'm like, this is perfect. And so we watched this whole video about, that's cute and funny and entertaining enough for the kids to watch, but maybe something about the square cube law stuck in their head. I hope it did.
Wait, what's the square cube law?
Well, that's it's the concept that as things get bigger, their surface area increases by 10 times, but their volume increases by like 1,000 times.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so that's the reason things are the size that they are, and the way that things that are of different sizes are built differently, and why a mouse has an incredibly fast heart rate and an elephant doesn't.
Right.
So it just, random facts like that.
Or
But
why elephants' bones have to be so dense.
exactly. And an interesting fact is that a mouse and an elephant will have approximately the same number of total heartbeats over their lifetime.
Huh.
Isn't that interesting?
Elephants just live longer.
Exactly. And their heartbeat's way slower.
Another thing that's proportionate is that all mammals tend to pee for the same amount of time. It's the same kind of proportionality thing. The proportionality of the size of the mammal and the size of their urethra. And an elephant pees for about 20 seconds, and so does like a small dog.
I have no response to that.
Okay, so
anyway,
did this satisfy Carter's desire to know what happens if you throw a giraffe out of an airplane?
So much so that we then went down the YouTube rabbit hole like you do, and just like, oh, we'll just let the next one autoplay, right? And so we're learning stuff. And then, like, of course, the next one that comes up is the perfect one for him to watch, and it's, what if we took all of the nuclear weapons in the world, put them in a pile, and detonated them? What would happen? And he's like, yes, let's watch this. And then...
Uh-oh.
Well, at one point, then they said, like, they went through the whole explanation, and it was bad. But then they said, like, but what if it was worse? What if we dug up, like, every scrap uranium on the planet and stacked it up? It would be this big. It would have this kind of yield. And then it's showing the video. Like, we put this giant pile in South America, and we detonated it. And it shows, like, this expanding fireball. It shows the nuclear fallout. It's showing the world going into a nuclear ice age because of all of the debris in the atmosphere. And... like the narrator saying, it's like, and all life on Earth would be dead within like a week, and then maybe some people in submarines would live until they ran out of food. And then Jane, like, and I turned around, I look, and Jane had this horrified look on her face. I'm like, what's wrong, Jane? And she goes, is this why we have to stay inside right now? and so we immediately had to pause the video, and my wife and I had to talk her down, like, no. This cartoon nuclear apocalypse is not why we're staying in the house right now.
Wow.
Oh yeah, poor Jane.
Well, like the third week of the coronavirus outbreak, we watched that 2011 movie, Contagion.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it is, and it's amazing how much stuff that is happening now is exactly like that movie. Setting up the remote hospitals and doing the the testing and all of those things. Except in that movie, if you remember, the death rate of people that got the disease was like 20%.
Yeah, stupid high.
Yeah,
which would cause way more of a panic than now. I don't know. Like, what would be the difference? Like, so. Listeners, we're in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. Like, if you don't know what that is, look it up on Wikipedia, because we're not going to go into it again. But now imagine what if the death rate of this thing was 10 times higher? Would
that was a big point of our discussion with our kids about this, because we had, they're all old enough that no one was traumatized or really confused. They recognized the differences, and we talked about those things. And one of them was, yes, this is different in that 20% of people that get it are dying. And what it caused was a lot more of breakdown of society. There was looting of grocery stores and things left in the street and that kind of thing. It was just there was more disruption to day-to-day life.
That makes sense. I can see that. People just like so we talked about this. There's a little bell curve of people that how hard they freak out. That would be a little, that would just, the whole bell curve would just skew more towards a much larger portion of the population freaking out.
Right.
And then a much smaller portion of the population rioting or protesting because it's not over yet.
Yeah, I mean, there was like breaking into people's houses going on and that kind of stuff.
I can see that happening, yeah. All right, that's a tangent.
Okay.
So I have another bad at parenting / Josh versus bureaucracy story.
Go for it.
Okay. So, dear listeners, and actually ties into COVID because I am teleworking right now. I'm one of the lucky few first world people where I have an accounting job where our firm had the tools available and all of the infrastructure and everything set up that we spent a couple of days getting ready for it, but we were able to move entirely online. So I'm remote desktopping into my computer at work. There is somebody in the office that is scanning documents that physically show up there into the system so we can access them and process them and do all the things that accountants do. So with that being said, I have to have a robust internet connection. And my provider at the time was not giving me the connection I needed. Like every couple of hours, it would just like completely drop out for 5 or 10 minutes.
I just realized how astonishingly good your video feed is right now.
You might be mentioning that because when I did switch over, I sent a couple screenshots of my upload speed and download speed to dear Ben, and just to show off, just to flex how much bandwidth I have coming into the house now. Oh, it's so great. But you're spoiling my story. So before I had like a crap connection, and so I'm like, we can't deal with this. And so I called the provider, and my intent when I first called them was I wanted just faster. Like I thought we just needed a bigger pipe, right? Because all the neighbors are doing it. Like we just need more bandwidth. So I called them, and they were saying like, oh, well, it's going to be like another $100 a month, and we have to sell you more equipment, and that like your modem is not compatible with higher bandwidth. I'm like, all right, forget it. I'll just call Cox. Oh, well, hang on a second, sir. Now that you said that you want to cancel, then we can offer you the next tiered package at half the price you're paying now, and we'll give you all the equipment for free. And it's like, first of all, why? Why do we play this stupid game with telecommunications providers? Oh,
you know why.
I know exactly why, because I know exactly why, but it just drives me nuts. Like, obviously, it's still profitable for you to give me the next tier for half the price with all the equipment for free just to keep me as a customer. So why are we...
like to win these games.
I do like to win these games. And so I thought at the time that I had won. Then, spoiler warning, I had not won. I had lost already by agreeing to play. So they sent me a new modem in the mail, overnight delivery, and they said, oh, there's nothing you need to do. Your internet is already upgraded to the next tier. You just have to plug in the new modem that's capable of the new higher speeds. And it was double the down and double the up that I had before. So great. And in my circumstances, teleworking with remote desktop, upload speed is almost just as important as my download speed because I am sending information to my office. So I can
not always relevant, but in your case it was.
Yes, in this case, upload speed is relevant. So modem shows up, I plug it in, everything seems to be hunky-dory. Except now it's dropping out for 5 minutes every hour instead of every 2 hours. So, why? Like, it just goes to nothing. Not like it gets slow, not like it gets buggy. Like, my internet completely shuts down for 5 minutes every hour.
Wait, I got to do the calculation on that. How many nines that is.
So Ben's referring to a thing that we had in the IT industry where you have to calculate your uptime, and they always say like 5 nines, like 99.99999% uptime.
Yeah, that's 92%, man.
Which is just
that's abysmal.
Industry standard. Yeah, you'd get fired, like hands down, no doubt about it.
Wow.
So anyway, I called their tech support. I'm like, hey, my internet's dropping. I need a new internet, so you guys are fired. And they're like, well, hang on a second. Let me take a oh, well, here's the problem. There was a routing issue or something happened on our end through the giant pipes before they get to your house. That's totally our bad. I've cleared it up. This will never happen again. That guy said those words to me on the phone. And like a complete sucker, I believed I believed him. And I took it because
that's not the kind of thing you just say facetiously, is it?
Right? And this is like, that's what I'm thinking on my side. I'm like, there is no way this guy could give me that kind of guarantee without being rock solid about it, right? And I'm like, okay, what's your name? Alex. And what's your employer number? Like your employee ID number? And he gave it to me. And you're telling me on the phone right now that I presume is being recorded that this will never happen again. You
did feel skeptical.
Yeah.
Rightfully.
I did feel skeptical, but the fact that he said it, like, that's one of those things, like, he can't be joking. Like, it was the best bluff ever because there's no way anybody would ever bluff that. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe this could be fixed. And for like 2 days, it was. And life was good. And the sun shined and it was rainbows.
And you're like, maybe that guy knew what he was talking about.
Maybe Alex knew what he was talking about. And then it started happening again. First for like 5 minutes every like couple times a day, and then every couple hours, and then again.
The first time it happened, you're like, "Oh no, here we go again."
Yeah, here it comes. It's coming back, and so then I called their tech support again, and then he's like, oh, well, have you, and they did all the things. Like, oh, well, did you restart the modem? Like, okay. And
Yeah, please
Ben,
don't
all right,
start
so
me at
this
square
is,
one.
yeah.
Oh no, I just went through all the emotions you did. Then, no, we're not going back to square one here, and you're trying to whatever. No, we're not doing.
And this, my family will tell you that I have a reputation for being very, very short-tempered with telemarketing people. I cannot stand the people that are paid to talk to you on the phone because listen, guy, I have a degree in computer science. I understand that I'm not part of your company, but I know what the crap I'm doing. Everything that you're going to tell me to do for the next 30 steps, I've done. Your job is to forward me to tier 2 because my problem is not something that you can fix.
Yeah.
But they're like, and then like
it's hard to shortcut a process like that because they don't have an escape for their process.
And that's the problem because then he goes, there was some silence on the line for a second.
I did tech support for 3 years, right? I was tier 2.
Yeah, and I worked at GoDaddy as a call center guy, as a carryover job, a holdover job for 6 months, and yeah, it's the same thing. That said, I was a really bad.
So you know that he doesn't have a way to escape because he doesn't know you. He doesn't know that you forgot to plug it in or whatever. He's got to go through his checklist.
I know he's got to go. And you know what? Like honestly, over the years, I've developed a little more patience for this whole process because there was one time that my Xbox Live wasn't working, and I called tech support, and they're like, and the first thing they said, "Did you unplug the Xbox and plug it back in?" I'm like, "No, I'm not doing that. This is Xbox Live. This is an account problem. That sounds stupid." And she goes, then she asked me, "Is the Xbox power plugged into a surge protector?" And I go, "How does that have absolutely anything to do with what I'm talking about?" And then like I got really mad at her, and then she said, "Well, sir, you cannot move on in this process until you unplug the Xbox from the surge protector and plug it straight into the wall. There's a surge protector built into the power supply." And like I was yelling at her for like 3 or 4 minutes, but I'll tell you, Ben, I unplugged it from the surge protector just to move on and plugged it in the wall. Everything fixed, no problems, everything connected. Like it wasn't like the Xbox wasn't working. I just couldn't connect to Xbox Live. That makes no sense that problem would be caused by that thing. And like I apologized to her profusely. Like
and I remember sometimes when I would
insane.
resolve an issue on a tech support call, the customers would I'd fix it, and they would ask me, "So what caused the problem?" And I'd be like, "I don't know. Computers are complex. We did a bunch of stuff. Now it's working. Sorry."
I worked at when I was in charge of the help desk at Langley at the Air Force Base. We would tell people, "Oh, sir, we got that cleared up for you. It was a SSTE or SSTU problem." Like, "Oh," and they'd always use, "Oh, okay, great." And hang up. And then I asked him one time, say, "Hey, what is SSTU?" He's like, "Oh, it's a system smarter than user." Like, "Oh, well, that's a good one to have." Yeah. Anyway.
All right. So they did this to you on your call where you were trying to get your internet service fixed.
Yes, and so the first time I called, and he said it was fixed forever. The second time I called, I got a tier, like they did, like this guy actually listened to me. I'm like, "Listen, I've done all the things. I have unplugged the modem. I've plugged it back in. I've unplugged the DSL thing. I plugged the DSL back in." He's like, "Well, have you unplugged the DSL plug from both ports and then switched them so it's plugged in the other way?" I'm like, "That is the most insane thing anyone has ever told me because if the cable doesn't work one way, it's not going to work the other way, and this is not going to troubleshoot or diagnose anything. But you know what, buddy? I'm going to do it just for you." Anyway.
You said it just like that?
Kind of, yeah. But it was much louder, much angrier. But I switched it, and still nothing. So finally, he forwards me on to tier 2, and then it's like, "Let me run a diagnostic." And he did the thing, and he's got me on mute, and he's just doing stuff. And every like 5 minutes, I check in. It's like, "Hey, how's it going?" It's like, "Oh yeah, I'm just and technobabble, whatever." And finally, he comes back and says, "Okay, yes, this was a problem on our end. System's being overloaded because of everything that's going on." Yeah, I get that. Like, "Oh, so we had to rebalance some of the tables or whatever." Like, he gave me a legitimate enough excuse. That, like, again, it's on their side. He acknowledged it. "Sorry about that. Everything's fixed and it won't happen again." It's like, "You told me this before." It's like, "But everything's fixed. It's fine." Okay, fine, whatever. That night, I went onto the internet and I signed up for Cox Internet. And this was really weird. This was really, really weird because like I went to the website and they're like, "Oh, what's the pricing?" And like it had you go through the whole sign up process. And I'm like, "Well, that's fine. Like I'm just not going to put in my credit card info, right? I just going to go through this whole like step-by-step process. I'll never put in my payment info and nothing will happen." And then I was like, okay, click next to go to payment info. Okay, cool. Next. And it's like, oh, your order has been placed. They will be out there to take care of everything. You'll be set up on Monday. And I'm like, you don't have any of my payment info. You're going to start services without, okay, I guess, whatever. Anyway, so I had these concurrent processes where I had internet service already. And then now Cox is going to come in and plug it in because I can't not be without internet for any portion of time because I'm working constantly, right? Which it worked out great. It turns out that like Cox had to ship me a modem, and I got the modem, and I was trying to install it, but it was a coax modem. My current modem is DSL, and like there's this whole panel in my laundry room where all the low voltage wiring in the house comes in, and it's all really old school because there's no Ethernet. There's no Ethernet wiring. It's all coax, first of all. And then second of all, none of it's hooked up to anything, and none of it's labeled because I don't have satellite TV. Who's had satellite TV in ever? And I know for a fact 2 of those wires are dead because I cut them in the attic to plug in my live TV feed and splice them together in order to have local live television in my living room. So, and I don't know which ones are down, but they're dead. And then like finally,
you've been in this box before.
I've been in this box. I spent a lot of time in there, and I'm trying to so I'm doing the thing where I went out to the side of the house and I found the Cox box where the coax comes in, and then I figured out that it had to be one of these 5, and so I'm plugging in the modem and I'm wiring it up to this coax, and I'm waiting like 10 minutes and it doesn't fire up, and then I switch it, and like I couldn't get it to work. This whole.
So wait, you were still paying Charter, and then you also had gotten Cox to just. You were going to do a hot switch.
Yes, I was going to do a hot switch, and I wasn't paying. I wasn't paying for Cox.
Switching from DSL to cable.
To what I thought was going to be cable.
Okay.
And so, and they told me like that I wouldn't be charged for anything until it was actually activated, and there was a process where you would sign in to the wireless network attached to the modem, and you would activate it through their website through the modem, right? And that would magically turn on the internet flowing into my house. Well, like none of the coax that I thought was going to work worked. And so I'm like, what is going on? And so finally I had to call tech support again for Cox this time. I'm like, hey, you guys sent me the startup kit. I cannot get it to work. And I'm a technically smart guy, so just walk me through it. Like, I'm not an idiot. Like, just give me the basic steps. I'm like, oh, well, sir, looking at the system here, it says you got fiber. And that's what we turned on the internet like a week ago, and it's flowing to your house right now. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I did some more digging, and in the back, behind all the cables, like Ben, like I know our listeners can't see, but I have both my hands in front of my face and I'm like pulling them apart, like ivy hanging down in a jungle, moving these vines out of the way. And in the back is this tiny little white box with one little tiny wire coming into it from the side. And I'm like, what do you? And I open it, and it was a fiber optic modem that had been hard installed into the back of the junction box.
What?
Yeah, it has just been in the house. It's just been sitting there for years, not plugged in, not on, nothing. Yeah. And so I'm like, and he's like, yeah, it says we pump in the fiber right now. I'm like, well, hang on. And I plugged it in, and I turned it on, and then I get the little green blinky light, and then everything goes solid green, and the little data light starts blinking. He's like, oh, yeah, it says it just, I'm getting some pingbacks from your address right now. I'm like, whoa, hang on a second. And so, like, so then I switch over my
You're missing Josh doing the wavy hands.
So I
you mean to tell me this whole time?
So, yeah, I unplugged the cable from the garbage modem, and I plug it into this tiny little fiber optic modem, and then the internet is just blistering fast. Like, I felt my phone heat up and start vibrating like it had so much data flowing into it. And I was like, oh, this is it. And I went to speed test right there on my phone, and Ben, I literally have like 15 times the connection that I had with the previous internet provider.
15 times.
15.
Amazing.
Yeah. And the price is only like 150% of what I was paying.
Well, in a classic case of why didn't somebody tell me this sooner, Josh now has 15 times the internet speed that he used to have.
We're not even to the bad at parenting part. Like, this is all the setup. All right, so now I've got the Cox internet. So now what's the last step of this process, Ben?
Give them your credit card number?
No, besides all that stuff, no, I had to cancel the other internet.
Oh, yes. No, okay, yes, I know. You need to cancel Charter, but they are on a mission to never let you cancel, and you've already proven this because you've gone down their like branching tree where they offer you gifts and incentive not to go.
That's right. And so like I knew going in that it was going to be a fight. Like I was going to have to fight with them. Ben, I went in thinking this was going to be a boxing match. I was not prepared for the World War I trench slog that I found myself in.
Wow.
Like, it was, first of all, like the phone tree asked me.
I thought that ended when AOL went out of business.
I thought it ended when Time Warner almost went under because they got so much flack for this. Apparently not.
Yeah, because they bought AOL.
Oh, there you go. No, so I get on the phone. First of all, like on the phone tree, I say, if you're calling to cancel services, press 2. Well, boop, there's number 2. And I'm sitting on hold for 20-something minutes. Fine, whatever. I have a headset attached to my phone. I can do other things while I'm listening to really, really crappy hold music. And then having the reminder every 30 seconds, you can go on our website. And finally, the guy comes on. He's like, oh, my name is obvious American name that is not really my name. How can I help you? And I said, well, Jake, his name, he said his name was Jake. It wasn't Jake. Jake, I called and I pushed the button to cancel my service, so I would like to cancel my service. And before you start, I have called, if you look at your history on there, I have called 3 times in the past week. You guys, I've been down this road. I've already tried the upgrade. You've already sent me the free stuff. You've already discounted my rate. I'm done. I can't handle it. I'm finished. I just want to cancel my internet. It's like, well, sir, we can offer you a discounted rate. I already got the discounted rate.
That's also not on his checklist.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm done. He's like, well, are you sure? Because it'd be really sad not to have internet. I already have internet. Go ahead and shut it off. It's like, well, who'd you get internet through? Because you're probably paying more. I'm not telling you who I got internet through. Cancel my service. Well, we can give you a discounted rate. Like, you already gave me the discounted rate. Cancel my service. And like this, if you're hearing this in my voice,
you were recording this, right? Because I've heard these videos on the internet.
Ben, like this was like I knew I was gonna have to fight with him to convince him, but it got so bad. Like there was like I was on the phone with him, not on hold. I was on hold for 20 minutes, but then I was on the phone with him for 45 minutes.
No, 45 minutes?
45 minutes. And like after the first, like I was trying to be super nice to him. He's like, oh, but why are you canceling? Because your service is garbage. I've called 3 times. You already have the records of that.
That's where you went wrong. You made it about them.
But it got so bad. It got so bad, Ben. I can't even describe to you. Like I was like, it got at one point. I just stopped answering.
There's an escape. There's an escape button on these trees. You know that, right?
What's the escape button?
Okay, I've had this before. Well, okay, so like when I was in England and I was leaving England to come back to the States, and I called up to cancel like my cell phone service. I call them, I push 2, I wait 20 minutes, I get on the phone with Jake, and he starts into his 45-minute long thing, and I say, Jake, your company gave me great service, I love it, I'm canceling it because I'm leaving the island and I'm moving to the States, and you don't provide service where I'm going. Thank you. And it was done in like 2 minutes.
Well, thanks, Harry Hindsight. That would have been great to know a week ago when I had to go through this slog.
It was amicable breakup. We're like, oh, okay, we're moving separate ways. We're seeing other people, and everything's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Well, all right. So
send you a Christmas card.
Early in this conversation, I told him, Jake, I want you to listen to what I'm saying to you. You are a person, right? You're not a robot. And I waited. He goes, no, I'm not a recording. Okay, good. Listen to the words coming out of my mouth. Your service is bad. I hate everything about your company. You have tried to fix it already. There's nothing.
This is the psychology of Josh that was the source of this 45-minute phone call. You wanted to be understood. You wanted him to appreciate that you were firing them because of poor service as a representative of the company. No. You wanted the company to feel bad.
Absolutely not. I was trying to escape the phone call. I was trying to get him to stop trying to sell me his service and just cancel my freaking service. Like, there's nothing you can offer me. There's no discount.
But if you're trying to break up with someone and they're like, why are you trying to break up with me? And you tell them why, then they're going to try to make it a discussion about the reason.
This is apples and oranges, sir. Because in a breakup, one person can decide to break up and the breakup is enforced. In this situation, they are going to keep charging my credit card until that guy says, yes, your service is canceled.
I don't think it's apples and oranges. There's still a discussion that's happening. That's why you're on the phone with them.
This is the problem.
You can just block the charges on your credit card, and then it's a one-way breakup.
I did not want to have a discussion with him at all, Ben. Like, the first thing I told him, I want to cancel my service. You don't need to know why. Just turn it off. Just turn it off. Just turn it off. Turn it off. For like, he never, and he just kept saying the same things over and over again. Like, and I was like,
sure.
I started getting physically agitated, and my voice started creeping up in octave and tone and volume. This is where the bad at parenting comes in, is because my son was sitting in the living room next to me doing whatever he was doing on his laptop, And I was trying to hold back my rage from this guy.
They're feeling your tension, I'm sure.
Well, anyway, apparently I thought I was doing okay, but it got so bad that at one point Nicole came out and like, Carter, come with me. And I watched her take him down the hall into another room, and I heard the door shut behind them. Well, so I realized then I should tone it back down, so I tried to pull it back. But then I realized that Carter was the only reason I wasn't swearing at the guy. And so then I started dropping the F-bombs on him because he kept trying to sell me stuff, Ben. And I was screaming into my phone, screaming at full volume, Jake, shut the F up. I don't want anything from you. Cancel my effing service. Like over and over and over again, Ben. Over and over again. And just so many times I yelled at him to just cancel it. At one point, I completely gave up and I sat down and I was exhausted. And I would let him do his whole thing. I'd say, and my only response to him would be cancel my service. And then he would launch into another thing, and I'd say, cancel my service. And he'd launch into another thing, and I'd say, cancel my service. That was the only response he got from me for 15 straight minutes. And I don't know what clicked, or if I magically said the 100th no, or the 50th F no, or the 25 or the 25th I'm going to find you and kill you, or whatever checkmark that they needed.
Your face is turning all red just retelling the story.
It was so bad, Ben. Like I can't. Like parts of it are hazy. I was so mad. Like finally at the end, it just clicked and it's like, okay, let's go ahead and cancel your service. Like, and he starts like processing and doing things, and he says like, what's your cell phone number? Why? It's like, I'm going to send you a text message to confirm all of this. I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you my cell phone number with the understanding that the only thing that you're allowed to send me is in relation to canceling my service. Is that correct? He said yes, and I said, Jake, so help me God, if you send me any kind of promotion or marketing material, I will find you. And do you know what's really funny about this, Ben? He said like, oh no, we're not going to send you any of that. And I gave him my cell phone number. I never got any text messages. That guy was totally going to send me more promotions and crap.
Yeah.
Until I threatened physical violence against this person.
I have this need. The reason I accuse you of this, and I still think I'm right, is I have this need to be understood by these people that represent the company as if they were acting as an agent of the CEO. Like, somewhere some people that are getting paid way, way, way more than that person on the phone call made a decision that led to the chain of events that gave them the process that they are executing now. This is a corporate decision that they've decided if they can just wear you out and offer you enough things, they'll keep you around, and that's way better than losing you.
Yes, and I totally get that. And this is why I was trying to articulate these things. I was trying to come up with any way that I could to bypass this process. And it just wasn't working. It just had to be, he just had to say all of his things from start to finish, or whatever magic checkbox got checked. I had to check it before.
My experience with that, I'm a charter customer here in Illinois, is that they have put me on their list of customers for potential upgrade, in that I've bought internet service from them, but not cable service.
Because you need all of it.
Because
Ben.
I don't want cable service.
You need to have cable. You need to have all the channels. You need to have a telephone line, because you need landlines these days.
And I want every single telemarketer that calls me, I try to engage them on the idea that the world has changed. That I will never watch broadcast television ever again in my life. Stop trying to sell it to me.
That's funny. Like that.
I want to be understood. I want them to acknowledge this fact instead of trying to sell me something that's a relic of the past.
I will say that, like, I understand what you're saying, like wanting to be understood. I do have a strong need to be understood when I have a strong stance. In this circumstance, if a telemarketer calls me for that kind of thing, that call I realize is just a losing battle, and I tell them, no, don't ever call me again, or you will face legal whatever ramifications, and then hang up. And typically they don't call
It's like I feel it's my duty as a corporate customer to inform the middle manager that made this decision. I ask them deliberately, is there some type of feedback process associated with this? I want you to feed it up your chain of command that I am telling you that I do not, nor will I ever pay anyone for broadcast television service ever again in my entire life. And there are more people like they're out me, and you need to understand this and incorporate it into your marketing process.
And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. There's the nugget. This is not Ben being upset with people calling him. This is Ben recognizing that they're in a sinking ship and he's trying to save them. Everyone at the charter internet, you're going down. You have to get in the lifeboats.
Oh, man. All right, well, this brings us to Bad at English, and I'm going to make this a quick one today because this is one of my favorites, and I'll touch on this one later. But one day I was sitting with my British friends, and I don't know how, but we got on the discussion of talking about farts, and they told me all the British words they could think of for fart, but my favorite one was Trump.
Oh, politically charged.
We'll leave that there and move on.
Oh, that's it. That's it. That's the grenade you're going to throw into this conversation and then walk off. Like, oh, by the way, Trump is a word for farts in England. Click. Boom. Everybody have fun with that. See you later.
So there's a question I've been wanting to ask you.
This better be about Trump and farts.
No, and not at all. I'm completely changing the subject and moving on. There's an aspect of my family culture that I wanted to ask you how it compares to yours. And I would give it on the broadest level, I would say that our family does not have assigned seats. Ooh. And when I say that, I mean like when we sit down at the dinner table, we don't always sit in the same place. When we pile in the minivan, we don't always sit in the same place, with the exception of the driver. And it manifests itself in so many different ways.
You come from another planet because that just makes no sense. Like
you would think it doesn't. But I feel like there's something fundamental and underlying to it, that it's about our easygoingness, our flexibility. Like, we're like, hey, you're in my seat. Just like you come out and somebody's in the seat you sat in before, so you sit in the next one over. And any two people in our family can sit next to it. You know, we don't have to be like, you sit there and you sit there, because when you two sit next to each other, you fight. And so you have to sit next to him because you two don't fight. It's not like that. So we just have flexibility.
It's okay. So first of all, the reason people have assigned seats is not just to deconflict, conflict.
Sure, that's one reason
in the family unit. That's one reason, but that's not all the reason. There is so in our family, we have assigned seats everywhere, Ben. Like every place in the house has certain seating arrangements, and like there might be one or two, but these are the accepted arrangements. And it's in.
All right, so tell me some of the places.
Okay, so like the dinner table, there is one seating assignment at the dinner table.
You sit in the same seat every single time.
Yes, I do. Of course I do. Like a sane person, I sit in exactly the same seat for dinner every night. And
I'm going to explain to you why this is sane. But go ahead.
I do whatever you do, you over there. But like the way that this is, it's never been enforced that like, well, no, stop. You go sit over there because that is your assigned seat. That is never how we've enforced it. And I'm realizing now that we never, like, it's just a total passive enforcement where we sit down, like if I sit down in my seat and Nicole sits down in her seat, and then if Carter were to sit down in the seat that Jane usually sits in, we would just both stare at him. What are you doing? I'm sitting here, but you usually sit over there. But I was going to sit here, but that's not usually where you sit. And then like this would go back and forth until he moved, because
that would be the way your family would enforce this rule. That's an unwritten rule, but exists.
Yes.
What if he were in your seat?
What if he was in my seat? Oh, then he would be physically thrown to his seat.
Right.
Because I'm not moving. There's no chance.
I don't have a seat. There is no dad's seat. You couldn't even, if you said that to my kids, hey, you're sitting in dad's seat, that wouldn't even make any sense.
And I will say this for you crazy hippie people living in some commune somewhere, apparently. Like, if you have no assigned seats, that's great. Daddy and mommy need assigned seats. There needs to be the throne for the queen and the king, and they need to sit in their thrones, and people need to sanctify the respect and the privilege and the position that those people hold.
It's kind of like that in the car.
Well,
how do you, Nicole, how do you decide who's going to drive? Is it one person is the default driver?
If we're going to drive anytime after dark, I'm going to drive, because I have found through, like, Nicole is perfectly willing to drive all the time. Nicole is an excellent driver. She is. She grew up driving in the middle of nowhere in Kansas, but she's an excellent driver. She has some minor road rage issues sometimes. It has never escalated to violence. But through trial and error, I have discovered that she is blind as a bat driving at night. So anytime after dark, I am driving. If we're going to drive more than 10 or 15 minutes, I'm driving. I do all the driving. All right, so I do driving. I drive probably 85% of the time. I have a lot of really funny driving stories associated with the fact that I do most of the driving in our family. One of my favorites was when we were driving to, I think it was our vacation. No, it was a family reunion in California or something somewhere. And I had worked a 6-hour day when I was still cleaning pools in the summer heat. It was July that I had worked in the day. We got home, loaded the car, and then we jumped in and we drove from Phoenix to California, and we had to get there in one shot. And two little kids, they did great. I remember Nicole telling me she was co-piloting for me the whole time, and I was just so dead. I was so done, and it was like 10 o'clock at night, and we were trying to get to just the hotel that we had booked for the night. And we're getting on this, and she's like, oh, wait, get on this on-ramp and get on the freeway. Like, okay, how much farther after that? And she goes, oh, it's like 10, 15 minutes, no problem. Like, great. And then her phone totally narked on her because we get on the on-ramp, and her phone goes, continue on I-85 or whatever it was for 54 miles. And I remember just like my head doing the slow pan over to her, like, what?
What?
And she's like, you'll be fine. We'll be there in no time.
Oh, jeez.
Anywho, no, I do most of the driving.
Yeah, and I'm the default driver in our family, not for any particular reason, but the reason I brought that up is, those seats are assigned. Like when we get in the car, I sit, if Alicia and I are both there, I sit in the driver's seat, she sits in the passenger seat, and the kids sort themselves out in the back. And sometimes there's a little bit of preference, but the problem is in our minivan, in order to have access to all 8 seats, you have to tumble the seats so that the people that get in first have to sit in the back row. You can't just like sit in the front and then tell the person that gets in last to get in the back, because then everybody's got to get out and you tell them it's just a disaster. Anyway, I brought all this up because when the coronavirus things kicked off and they canceled school and stuff, at first we were just kind of lost without the structure in our lives. There was no longer the start of the school day and the start of the work day and the morning routine, and we just devolved into like what probably looked a lot akin to summer vacation. Stay up too late, sleep in too long, no structure, and then the kids started getting behind on their homework and stuff like that. It's just what happens in our family because we don't have assigned seats. So we're like, we had a family meeting. We're like, had a crisis. So we sat down and we're like, all right, we got to fix this. We got to do something about it. And the kids, they were waiting for us to act like grown-ups. They're like, okay, great, let's do this. So we got out the whiteboard and we planned out a notional schedule. This is wake up time, this is breakfast time, then it's cleaned up, then we do homework, then we stop for lunch, then we do the things in the afternoon, and then we clean up the house, and then whatever. And we filled it all out, wrote it all out on our microboard. And it was okay. And then my daughter, who's kind of artistic, rewrote it, and it was flowery and nice and looked real nice. And it lasted 2 days.
So this is blowing my mind, the fact that you lived like some weird, I'm going to keep going back to the hippie commune because I've got no other like disorganized anarchic or just craziness. Like the size of your family unit anyway just immediately makes me think that you would have to have this level of structure all the time just to make the normal processes of life happen.
I looked at my wife once. I'm like, how do we get away with this? How do we live like homeless people and yet have the lives of middle class people? Because we just neither of us are very inclined towards this high degree of rigor and discipline and things like assigned seats. I don't know. I've always kind of gravitated toward things like the military and being a missionary because it gives external structure to my life that otherwise I don't enforce.
I mean, I guess. Okay. Like, is it just, this is the way that you rebel? Is that like you're so strict and structured at work that you come home and just explode out of your ABUs and just like, whatever goes, baby, woo?
Well, I mean, we have some structure, but it feels more like when it's like The Sims. They walk around with the 3 meters over their head. There's the potty meter and the sleep meter and the eat meter. And when one gets depleted, then they start looking for food. That's what it's like in my house. There's not dinner time. There's I'm hungry time. And it's not the same for everyone.
Wait, hang on. You don't have structured meals at your house?
We do, sorta.
What does that? What does sorta mean, Ben?
Oh, it's what it looks like when you don't have assigned seats. You imagine this chaos, but when we come to the table, we just take whatever seat's available. And if you were the last at the table, you get the last seat.
Is there food prepared? Like, do people have to fend for themselves? Are there people fighting over burners on the stove?
Oh, okay, well, again, you're imagining 4-year-olds. When they're 10, they can they can fend for themselves a lot better. But
for dinner,
I make dinner every night.
Okay.
I made dinner tonight, but our dinner time, the actual execution time, can swing by as much as 5 hours. Like when it actually is just on the table.
my mind is blown over here because
Yeah.
you're talking to anybody that knows me that has been to my house for any kind of prepared meal. We eat like on the button. Like when we say like, hey, come over, we're gonna have dinner at 6. Like
Yeah, well, it's different if you're having company or something like that.
But this is the thing is that we have that same structure. Like we eat at the exact same times, period. Like that's it.
Right. And that means you have to start at a certain time.
Right, which we do.
The meal preparation and those kinds of things. Yes. And we just don't. Our life doesn't have assigned seats.
And I don't.
And everyone's okay with it.
And that blows my mind. Like my life would fall to pieces. Like we would be half-clothed barbarians burning like furniture for warmth if I didn't have this level of structure in my house.
So I was pondering this as I was erasing the whiteboard, and I thought, was this a failure? You know, like, did we fail when we had this family meeting and came up with this schedule and stuff? And I thought, no, it's okay. Because most of the time, when we're doing the kinds of things where it doesn't matter that there's not assigned seats, it's okay. It doesn't matter. You just sit in whatever seat's available, and you eat whenever it's time, and it just works out.
I don't get it. Now, I will say, I know there is an aspect of your life that I know has assigned seats, that has assigned seats since you've been married, and you just don't realize it. I'm going to bring it up right now. It's who sleeps on what side of the bed. That's been assigned and has not changed, has it?
It has.
How? How has it changed?
Well, here's the thing. You don't realize this. Okay, you talked once on the show, and I really liked it. I think about it a lot, about your decision trees and how they're very predictable. And I found this sometimes as I listen to the podcast, like when I'm rollerblading, I'll kind of lose track of the fact that I'm listening to you and me talking, and you'll say something, and I will respond out loud to what you said in unison with myself, and realize that I had gone down the exact same decision tree the exact same way.
Yeah, your brain was in the same spot. Yeah.
Yes, it triggered the same things in my brain. It caused the same neurons to fire. It caused the same output to happen again. But there are other things where it's more like on Jurassic Park, you know, when Malcolm talks about chaos and he drips the water on his hand and says it could go either way.
Right.
It's like that. And it's like that with who sleeps on what side of the bed. You would say, well, I prefer this side or that side, but every time we've moved, the house has been slightly different, the position of the furniture has been slightly different, and it just changes from time to time.
Okay, that's acceptable. If the physical room that you're sleeping in changes, then you can change the sleeping arrangements. That's the only time. Like you haven't.
But we don't change like arbitrarily. Like okay. I don't lay down at night on the other side of the bed. She would come in and look at me and be like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, that would freak my wife out. She actually she tried to pull that the other day because she discovered that I'm breaking down the mattress on my side because I weigh significantly more than she does. And so she was like, why is there this big like dip in your side of the bed? I'm like, what are you talking about? There's not one on yours. And I went over on her side and all of her springs are still at full extension and everything's like where it was, like it was new, and it felt like a new mattress. I'm like, oh, this is amazing.
Let's switch.
Yeah, no, that's like, and she goes, oh, well, let's just go ahead and switch. I'm like, no, that's psychotic. Why would we do that? And then she tried. She like
to extend the life of the mattress. She didn't like your side, did she?
I got done brushing my teeth and I came in and she was laying on my side of the bed. I'm like, no, roll over. This is not happening.
Yeah.
I will say this. Do you have the algorithm for which side of the bed that you're going to sleep on when if you're going to a hotel? Do you have the algorithm to know just instantly both parties know who's sleeping on what side of the bed?
No.
Okay.
Nope, doesn't exist.
So what happens when you go to a hotel and there's a king bed and then your wife and you walk into the room at the same time? Is it like summer camp where you both throw your crap down on the bed as fast as you can?
No, neither. This is the thing that goes along with a family that doesn't have assigned seats. Neither of us have a strong enough preference that kind of thing is happening. We might have a few reasons, but if she'd already laid down, I would just by default go to the other side.
Blows my mind. Like, can't even, we have the algorithm. We walk into a room, whichever side of the bed is closest to the door, that's where I'm sleeping. That is where I'm sleeping. That's it.
And she knows that, and she wouldn't try to violate it?
She knows that. I know that. Neither one of us would try to violate that. And it has switched.
See, if this was a question on the dating game and you asked her which side of the bed does your husband like to sleep on, we would fail. We would not get it because we don't have a preference, and this doesn't happen.
This is an excellent point. I want to go on the dating game against you and Alicia because your whole life just doesn't make any sense. And Nicole and I have had these discussions.
It would look like we don't know each other. You guys have been married for 21 years and you don't even know which side of the bed the other person likes to sleep on?
We were in an apartment living together for like a month when we sat down. Like, listen, we need to get these rules on paper. Like this has to happen. Like, where are you sleeping? Who's taking out the trash? What time is dinner?
Yeah, this is a prenup.
Line this stuff up, man. Oh,
Yeah.
that's
No, and so I'm calling it that. I'm calling it not having assigned seats, but it is pervasive. It's in every aspect of our lives. It's in who does the chores. It's in who, what time we get up. It's who takes the kids. And I think this first came up between you and me when we were talking about who is the authority in the house.
Yes.
Who is at the top of the chain of command. And it came out that there isn't someone in my house. That person doesn't exist.
That's and okay. So it's not just that people come and go as they please and sit wherever they want. It's a whole lifestyle, the no assigned seats.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
And this is
no assigned seats.
This explains why you don't get the I'm air quoting here, the good computer to record the podcast on every time.
Yeah, if the kids have it, I just let them alone.
Which is ridiculous. All right, you're the king of the castle. Like, I have kicked my son off of so much stuff. I walk into a room, it's like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm watching this show. I really love it. That's great. Scoot over. We're watching what I'm watching now. Click. Because that's your privilege as a father and as an adult that you get to leverage. And then, like, as the child, they just get to sit there and be like, man, I can't wait until I get to walk into my living room and do that to my kids someday.
Yeah, see, I did the opposite. When I was a kid and my parents would kick me off of the computer with impunity, I would think, when I'm a parent, I'm not going to do that to my kids. And here I am, and it's my chance.
Yeah, you need to kick your kids off the computer. It makes you feel really powerful and really, like, wow, that says a lot about you, doesn't it?
I do from time to time. And I don't apologize, and I don't mince words about it. I'm just like, off. I own this. Get. But I don't do it very often.
That is one thing that I used to... Nicole doesn't like it when I say this. I have said it less lately, but like when kids ask me why, it's like, all right, go to bed. Brush your teeth and get ready to go to bed. Oh, why? Because I'm the alpha and the omega. Go to bed. And like, she didn't like me saying that.
Okay, this reminds me of an argument my daughters have. So the way our kids are, they go boy, girl, girl. So there's only pairs at the front and the end. And the boys never had any trouble as far as like, they didn't fight over who got to wear what clothes or anything like that. And it doesn't have a problem in the middle because the genders are mixed. But at the end, my two daughters at the end are pretty close together, in size and age. And so they have the problems where like, they could wear the same clothes and like, hey, you wore my thing and why are you got my thing and that kind of thing. And one night my daughters were in the room having a fight about this. Like, that's mine, but you said I could wear it, blah, 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 blah. And my wife is like, stop. Everybody stop. Every scrap of cloth in this house belongs to me, including your father's underwear.
Nice.
And my daughters both kind of froze and looked at her and processed it, and the argument stopped.
That's pretty good. Kudos to Alicia for laying down the law. Yeah. Love it when you get those cool moments like that.
So we had set aside a discussion here at the end. You brought it up to me during the weekend. I said I thought we should do it on the podcast. You would I don't know how you'd seen that apparently Mike Pence is the leader of the task force for the coronavirus and the Trump administration would open every meeting of his task force with a prayer. So, and you asked me how I felt about that.
Yeah. So the idea was this whole article was about just how this whole process is going anyway. And then like they were comparing and contrasting the structure that usually occurs when Mike Pence is running the meeting versus when President Donald Trump shows up. It's kind of more loose. It's kind of more no assigned seats lifestyle where loosey-goosey and like talking points get thrown out and everything gets mixed up. But one of the throwaway lines that they had is like, oh, Mike Pence there, it's very structured, and he opens every meeting with a prayer. And before we even get into any of this, like I'm very trepidatious of having this conversation with you because I don't want to turn off any of our listeners from whatever we're saying. Like there's going to be listeners that agree with me, and there's going to be listeners that agree with you. And we just need to emphasize the fact that we both respect each other's positions on this, I think. Like,
agreed.
We understand where we're coming from. As two intellectual people, we understand that we can have differences in beliefs, opinions, thoughts, facts, whatever, and still respect the other person's position enough to have a cordial, polite discussion about it.
Yes.
I might think that you're slightly crazy, and you might think that I am deliberately going to burn for what I think, but that's okay. At the end of the day, we're still friends.
Yes. And I think all the more reason why we should get into it here, so we can demonstrate what a respectful discussion between two people with differing opinions looks like. So I wanted to just say, I think if you want to reduce us to straw men, you are a principled atheist who believes in the non-existence of God because of your belief in scientific evidence and fact. Would you think that's a misclassification of your position?
I think that's good enough if we want to boil it down. Yeah.
Okay, and then let's hear you do the same for me then.
I'm very tempted to do the sarcastic, like ridiculous one, but I won't.
Okay.
I think you are a very moral, intelligent, principled person that has a very strong set of beliefs that inform who you are and the decisions that you make through your life, and that you make a deliberate effort to be a better example of that ideal every day.
All that's true about you too.
Oh, so touching. We're going to be name calling each other by the end of this.
So I'm going to correct you, and I'm also going to add that I do those things because I believe in the existence of a supreme being. I believe in God.
Wow, I didn't even bring that into it. Let's right there. That's just like a difference between the two of us, is because that never even entered my thought process to talk about. That is the core of who you are, is the belief in God and your specific the idiosyncrasies of your specific sect. I don't even know what words I can use without sounding offensive. None of this is intended to be offensive at all.
So when you first asked me this question about, what do you think about Mike Pence saying prayers at the beginning of his meetings, I thought of all the times I've said prayers in uniform as a military member.
And I thought about all the times where every mass group meeting of anything in the military opened with a prayer.
Yeah, it was probably worse at the academy. I mean, the symbol of the academy is a chapel.
It happens everywhere, and it has happened everywhere. It's to the point where it's so structured that it's not out of the question that you actually go out and find volunteers. Like, hey, have you had an opportunity to speak in front of people before? If not, then maybe you can say the prayer at the beginning of the next big meeting or whatever. And I just remember all the times when I deliberately, everyone was like, okay, everyone bow your heads in prayer, and I wouldn't. I would just stand there looking around trying to make eye contact with other people who were looking around like I was to see.
Did you feel like Colin Kaepernick kneeling during the national anthem?
Not really. I just felt like I had the same little thought in my head every time. Like, I understand why we do this, but why do we do this?
Yeah. You got to understand it's decreased in frequency and magnitude over the years. I mean, it does still exist in remnants, but we're questioning it everywhere.
Yes, we say that, which is why part of this article was interesting to me, is that the vice president of the United States, one heartbeat from the big seat, is deliberately opening every one of his task force meetings every day. It's not like they meet once a year. It's every day with a prayer.
Yeah.
And
I don't know. Is it to you, is it about the frequency as opposed to just the existence of it? Because, I mean, we don't pray every day in the military, but we pray at almost every retirement ceremony.
I think it's not so much the frequency, it's the fact that the environment that it's happening in. Is that a place where it's appropriate to be invoking your specific beliefs? Even as an intelligent person, you can recognize, I want to, this is my meeting, I want to start this meeting with a prayer. You have to take a second and recognize maybe not everybody in this room has the same set of beliefs that I do. Did he ever question the fact of the appropriateness of that? Or did he just bulldoze straight through any and all contrary thoughts and objections and just assume that he's in the right because this is his belief and he can do whatever he wants? It speaks to the mindset of the person that's making these decisions, and then also to the, either the lack of or the deliberate dismissal of other people's opinions.
So do you think the most sensitive position is not to pray under any circumstances?
I think so I'm being careful not to try to get boxed into a corner during this conversation.
Right, and I'm not trying to box you into a corner.
I realize
but I'm just saying, do you think the default should be not pray?
I think the default should be, because that goes the other way, right? Because then that's me superseding my beliefs over everybody else. You can pray on your own time. Right now, this is problem solving time. Well, some people believe that that's part of the problem solving process. I think the appropriate thing is, okay, we're going to take, a moment of silence, say any prayers you want. One of those. Just don't lead a group in a prayer. Just everybody be quiet for a second. Let everybody do their religious thing if they want, and then we'll move on.
Okay, so I am going to try to paint you in a corner a little bit. So let's imagine an alternate universe where you'd stayed in the Air Force. You're Lieutenant Colonel Josh Fleshman. The Mike Pence coronavirus task force is in need of someone who's an expert in computer science, tactical communications technologies, and unmanned airborne vehicles. Somebody probably about the lieutenant colonel, maybe he's been in service about 15 years. I need this person on my task force right now. They look down the list, you're the only one. They call you, send you to Washington, D.C., and you are now on the Mike Pence coronavirus task force. And he goes to start his first meeting and says, all right, I'm a man of God. I believe in invoking his name and all that I do, and I'm going to start every meeting that we have with a prayer. Does anyone have a problem with that?
Ooh, okay. So there's two. You're painting me in a different place because I thought, like, what would you do? What would you say? Like, I would obviously in that scenario say nothing, and everybody would bow their head for their prayer, and I would just do what I always do, and I'd sit in the back and just kind of drum my hands until it was over, politely just shutting my face about it. Now I get the opportunity. Are there any objections? Like, realistically, in that scenario, like I know my role. I'm not rocking the boat. That's the Vice President of the United States. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Nobody, Lieutenant Colonel Faceless over here. Nope, dang it. And then immediately now I think like, okay, well now I'm just being a yes man, and what is the point of me even being here? Dang it, Ben. Yeah. You're doing a good job with this one. I think what I would probably do is the first time he said that, I would keep quiet and then probably approach one of his staffers about it afterward.
Okay. I get it. It just take a less disruptive way that's a recognition of your relative rank in the what's happening.
It's like, listen, I don't want to rock the boat, and I'm not going to bring it up at the beginning of the meeting because that's not what we're here for. But he asked for objections. I have some. Here they are.
Because you learned at the academy what happens to cadets who, when the chief of staff says, just send me an email if you have any objections to what I say.
So imagine that you're standing up on a stage and there's a sea of people that are sitting down. You ask, are there any questions? And then one person stands up. You cannot help but make the comparison to a whack-a-mole board. You just want to hit that guy down back into his seat as hard and as fast as possible.
Right. I did not mean, are there any questions?
Yeah, no, that's... All right, so when I said, are there any questions, what I meant was, I'm done now. You shut up.
Right. There's this classic scene in the Steve Martin movie, Sergeant Bilko. Have you seen that?
I have seen Sergeant Bilko, yes.
Dan Aykroyd plays a full-bird colonel in there, and he's hapless and stupid. And there's this scene where he's like, all right, troops, I'm here. I'm going to run the garrison. I have an open-door policy. And he goes towards him. He holds his finger up like he's going to say something. He's like, sir. And he slams the door in his face. And that's the colonel's open-door policy.
Yep, and that's how that works. But anyway, so we're talking about me specifically in this whole scenario, but I was trying to draw it to a larger level. And like the conversation that we ended up having a little very vaguely about was the idea of religion and personal beliefs informing decision making on a political scale. And like the idea that we do have lawmakers, we do have leaders in the military, in the civilian world. There's a lot of examples we can quote. Like just the easiest one off the top of my head is Chick-fil-A is closed on Sundays, every Sunday, because the owners of that company believe that Sunday is, the Lord's Day. And they can make that decision. They're allowed to. But when it starts crossing into the public sector, like we have people with specific religious beliefs that other people may not agree with, and they are making decisions on behalf of the group that may not be indicative or representative of that group. Of that entire group is rather what I should say.
I'm with you. We agree wholeheartedly on this, I think.
Okay. Well, then that makes for a terrible discussion. I can see that. You're totally right.
Yeah.
So then, this is just indicative of that. The fact that we have a leader who has delivered. This is the problem. It's the problem. People are not the people that have strong beliefs like yourself that can recognize and accept that there are differences in opinion, and then they take that as a factor into their decision making as they go forward. On the other end of that sliding scale, we have the guy who's leading the meeting, who is the guy in charge, who has strong religious beliefs. And this is my problem. By opening every meeting with a prayer, he has either gone through the deliberate decision process, recognized that people may disagree with him, and he's going to do it anyway. And so either minimizing or downplaying or just believing that they are wrong. Or what is far scarier, in my opinion, is that those people never even entered his mind. And he's just going to do what he does because that's the right thing, Ben.
Yeah, well, if I ever get a chance, I'll ask him. I don't know which.
Well, this is turning into a really lame discussion. I thought I was.
Okay. So I'm gonna play devil's advocate. I'm gonna play heaven's advocate for a minute.
Nice.
And I'm gonna tell you about a few times I've been in a situation where I've thought about pushing the boundaries on this.
Ooh.
When I was in Italy, as you remember, when I told the story of the Italian job in episode 9, Bo Capella died because of an alcohol-related incident. And you kind of touched briefly in that episode on the magnitude of what happens in a unit when there's an alcohol-related incident, particularly one that ends in a death.
Yeah.
That one in particular, I think the commander was just so interested in sweeping it under the carpet that didn't actually happen. But a few months later, there was another alcohol-related incident. This one didn't result in a death, but it was damage of property or something. Something happened related to members' use of alcohol. And so we did what happens in a military unit when there's an alcohol-related incident. It's a threat to the commander, it's a threat to the unit, and so they gather all the leadership together, and we have a big put your heads together meeting. Let's come up with all of our best positive management ideas to help prevent further alcohol-related incidents. Now, everyone in the unit is a suspect. They're under suspicion, and how do we proactively manage their behavior to prevent further alcohol-related incidents in this unit? You've been through this, I assume.
Many, many times, and I'm always the guy in the room that goes, well, sir, everyone is a grown, responsible adult, and if, just punish the person who did it, and then stop trying to kill ants with sledgehammers. And then I'm the one that's told to shut up, and I'm the one that's told to go leave the room because I'm not contributing.
I go to a completely different place. So I don't know why, but just for some reason, our unit in Italy just lent itself to us having these marathon 4-hour meetings in a room together, where we're doing these kinds of things. And that's what is happening. And I'm just sitting over there just thinking, what do we really do about this? Because I get the, take the guy that did it and give him a sandwich board and make him go stand out at the gate and say, I'm an idiot for drinking and you shouldn't drink or you could end up like me. And I guess that's cutesy and it looks proactive as a manager. Or you can say everyone in that person's unit now has to come early or come in on a weekend or whatever. Just all the myriad of stupid military nonsense that we do when this kind of thing happens. And I'm just sitting there thinking, I could influence this. I could potentially influence this. And I'm thinking, what do I really think the right thing to do in this situation is? And I get the opinion that you expressed there. Just punish the person that did it and let everyone go on with their day. They didn't do it. In a situation like this, I'm thinking I'm defaulting to my religious beliefs.
Right.
I have never had a drop of alcohol in my life.
You're missing out.
And I think all these bad things that happen when people are drinking wouldn't happen if they didn't. And there are places in the military where they recognize the potential danger that comes from that, and they completely lock it down. In Korea right now, if you go there, you're locked down for the first 30 days you get there and before you leave. And there have been times where they've gone completely dry just because of the environment that is and the people there. In the deployed environment and several other places, they've just completely restrict drinking. But they justify it on a very secular basis based on command priorities and statistics and those kinds of things.
Right.
But my beliefs are such that when you obey the commandments of God, He blesses you. And the kind of goals, the kind of objectives that they want to achieve are the kind of things you can only have not just from not doing the bad stuff, but from doing the righteous things, doing the good things. And that will bring the blessings of God on you and your life and the things you're trying to do. And all the goals they wanted, I couldn't give any feedback because what I really wanted to say is, well, tell them not to drink.
Yeah, that's the problem with these.
Tell them to stop sleeping around. Tell them to go to church on Sunday. Tell them to, be true and faithful. And it's not useful feedback in that kind of environment because there's a whole, I'd say, a blind spot in our leadership tools.
Okay. So how do you then personally marry the dissonance between the idea that you have that these people should be living more moral lives and you have the vehicle from your perspective, you have the thing, the answer, the one and ultimate, this is how you live, start to finish. Just follow the rules. They're all written down right here in this convenient book that you can get for free by calling this 1-800 number. So how do you juxtapose that idea in your head with what you're talking about, where you just sat quietly in the room because there's nothing useful that you can contribute?
Yeah, you really distilled it well because that's the exact dilemma. So I'm sitting there for 4 hours and I'm waiting for my opportunity to do it in a subtle way. Like, all right, they're talking about the sandwich board thing, and maybe if they bring it up for a vote, I could say, I don't think that's a good idea. That's my little piece of that. Like, I don't think that's the right way to go about this. And I also don't think like a military style crackdown where you command everyone not to drink. I don't think that's it either. I think that the most sustainable model for maintaining behavior is when people are making the right decisions of their own accord, not because of fear of punishment, not because of public embarrassment, but because they have it inside of them and they want to do the right thing for the right reason.
Okay.
So I look for ways to bring that into what I'm trying to do. How can I make them want to do the right thing for the right reason? And if I can find a way to express that what sounds religious on the surface in a secular way, then I go for it,
I see. So you recognize the fact that the religious approach might not have the traction that you're looking for. And you try to, it sounds like you distill the message, like this is the vehicle that you use personally in your life to make these right decisions. You try to distill out just the actionable portion of that and then wrap it in a secular package and try to feed everybody that.
Exactly.
That's what it sounds like. Okay. Well, I will say you're one of the good ones because unfortunately in the world that we live in, it seems like the vocal minority is the ones that you see on TV causing this ruckus. And I chose those words specifically because it's not everybody that you see are right-wing nut jobs or left-wing nut jobs. Most people live in the middle, and the people that you see on TV or you read on the YouTube comments or wherever you're reading this echo chamber stuff that you see, those are the vocal minority. Very few people are actually that passionate about these topics. So unfortunately, we get stuck with looking at people on TV that have very, very strong feelings one way or the other. And there are, there's aspects of the law and the country that we live in where this is a majority Christian country. And so we have to live with majority Christian rules and regulations. For the most part, those rules and those laws and those ethical beliefs line up pretty well with a functioning civilization. Thou shalt not kill is a pretty good commandment to follow if you expect to have neighbors.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are some where it kind of slips into this gray area where I have feelings that people maybe should have more personal freedoms to make their own decisions. And there are people that strongly very much believe that, no, this is black and white. We're not talking about gray. This is black and white.
Sure. Yeah. The victimless crimes that have moral implications.
Are we going to say the word?
From religious foundation.
Are we going to say the word?
We're talking about, homosexuality or, gay marriage or abortion or, those issues that exist on the fringes of political discourse that evoke very strong feelings in people.
Yes, and it's almost impossible to have a discussion about, do you think it's okay to have religion in the public sector without talking about these, not specifically, but in general. I think
drug use.
Yeah. People can, I think, interpret what our stances on these individual topics are. So we don't even need to talk about why we believe what we believe. I think the more pertinent discussion to have is why can't we have an intelligent conversation about this at the public level? Why does it always degenerate into, well, you're wrong. Well, no, you're wrong. And then it's just throwing crap at each other. We can't, I just don't know. It feels like, and I don't know, my wife and I, we talk about this all the time. Has the political sector actually gotten worse and degenerated so badly over time, or are we just now old enough that we're paying more attention to it?
So it's gotten reduced down to a bumper sticker that you've probably seen, WWJD, what would Jesus do? But I think that's probably a pretty good short approximation for my decision process a lot of the time.
Okay.
If I'm trying to decide what to do in any particular decision, what would Jesus do is a good way to do it. So what would you say is your shortcut? What's your moral
What's my
code?
moral shortcut? That's an excellent question. All right. So because I have thought about this and I've tried to distill what I think. And the one rule that I try to keep in my mind is that we should have as much freedom as possible to make the choices that we want to make that don't impact other people. If I have a choice that I can make that doesn't impact anybody else, then I should be free to make that choice one way or another. I think that's where I land on that.
Okay. So WWJD could also stand for What Would Josh Do?
Oh.
And 2 nights ago, my wife and I went through the Arby's drive-thru and ordered enough food for 7 people.
And they told you...
You'll never guess what happened.
So I am on the edge of my seat now. I want to hear this story.
Okay, so I ordered, enough food for 7 people. And we pull up to the window, exchange the money and stuff, and he starts handing out the window, and then he gets that look in his eye, and I know it's about to happen. And he goes, sir, it's going to be a minute on that second order of chicken wings. Could you please pull forward?
It's always the stuff that's got to go in the deep fryer.
And I thought of you in that moment. And I looked over at Alicia to see if she was keyed in, and she wasn't. Oh. She wasn't ready for she didn't see what was happening. And I thought about saying no, and I gave a classified no. Here was what I did. I recognized that he had forgotten to hand our drinks out the window before he'd asked me to pull forward.
Okay.
And I saw forward into the future. This is that wisdom thing I was telling you about. I pull forward. They do bring my food out to me because I knew they were going to. I just could tell they were going to. They do bring my food out to me, but they don't bring out my drinks because why would they bring the drinks outside? That wasn't what I was waiting on. I was waiting on the fryer.
Right.
So then this stupid bumbling thing occurs where I'm like, but you forgot my drinks, and then he wants to see my receipt or goes back inside or whatever, and it just takes way too long, and it's an annoyance.
Yeah, you saw the alternate timeline, that the alternate 1985 that was going to skew off in this moment. And so So then you asked for the drinks to stall for time.
Pull forward. Yes. So I asked for the drinks. And he's like, oh, and he looks at my receipt because he was too anxious to ask me to pull forward. He wanted to do it right away. And he realized he jumped the gun, and he kind of looked at my receipt and he's, and they were sitting right there, and he handed them to me. So it happened really fast. And he's like, now could you pull forward? And I didn't have a reason not to. It felt too confrontational.
Oh, Ben. And then you sat for way longer than you needed to.
No. We pulled forward. They came out within 2 minutes.
Of course, you pulled forward, and everybody in the car, we turned off the radio, and we sang songs together, and it was great. We had a medley.
No. Okay, so then I look over at Alicia, and I'm like, hey, we could have done the thing. She's like, what thing? Josh's thing. She's like, oh, no, we can't do that.
Oh, no. No. Ben, we're good people. We don't do that.
Well, but when you're actually in that situation, it feels so confrontational. I don't know how you lasted as long as you did against that charter guy.
Oh, so...
the same guy that can, tell someone that asked you to pull forward in a drive-thru to screw off went a half hour before you started dropping F-bombs on the charter guy.
So those situations, I have the exact opposite reaction. It's not a fight or flight response. It's a fight or fight harder response for me. It's like, thou shalt not.
He did the equivalent of peeing in your food on that phone call. He could have canceled your thing and taken you out of their system 40 minutes earlier.
But he didn't.
That one phone call was equal to all the time you've ever waited in a drive-thru for pulling forward, waiting for your food to come out.
But I didn't know what else.
Times 4.
Yeah, but it wasn't any of my decision-making that caused that phone call to go as long as it did. That was his fault.
You'll never know if that's your attitude.
That's not true. I could call and try to cancel Cox right now. I'm going to sign back up. I'm going to sign back up for my charter internet for one day.
Wait. I got to understand this. Are you telling me you believe that there is no possible... Okay, I just watched Avengers Infinity War today, and there's that scene where Doctor Strange is sitting there with the green glowing spinning around him, and his face is spinning back and forth, and he's seeing all the possible future trees. You're telling me that if Josh Fleshman had sat there before you called up that charter guy, there's no possible universe where that call went very quickly and very short?
I think if all the variables are the same, we're assuming that it's the same it's the same person that I get on the call, and it's the same end state. The only thing that varies is what I say to him on the call.
Yeah.
Then yes, I think there is no universe where that call was going to last any shorter.
That's why you'll never know.
What do you?
I bet I could cancel it. I bet I could cancel charter service faster than. I bet I could do it within 10.
Listeners, I'm so incredulous. I can't come up with words. The facial expressions. This is not a.
But you have to believe that there is possible that something different you could have done instead of just believing you were helpless.
something different. I could have physically killed him. Like, I don't know. I could have asked him for his address.
No. It's a Chinese finger puzzle. The harder you pull, you're not saying pulling harder is going to get it off.
Ben,
not pulling harder is going to get it off.
Right, so we already talked about rule 0. I should be able to choose as long as it doesn't impact other people. That's rule 0. Rule 1, sir. Rule 1 for me, and I've said this many times in my house. If brute force doesn't solve your problem, you're not using enough.
I'm imagining you with the Chinese finger puzzle going, come on!
So there was one time in college where, like, when you're going into the chow hall, there's all of these doors lined up next to each other, right? And only a couple of them are ever unlocked, and you never know which ones it's going to be. And so me and my group of friends walked up to the doors, and like we all grabbed a different one and pulled, and then like one person found the one that was open, and everybody goes in that one. I stayed pulling my door progressively harder and harder until like, and then my friends kept walking, and then like after a couple of seconds they realized it wasn't there, and they turned around, they saw me still pulling the door, and then like I was just like starting to growl at it, and then they came up and
you haven't applied enough force.
They came up and then they pushed the door open and like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I was confident that if I stood here long enough and pulled hard enough, I'd open the door.
Okay, all right. Well, I think we'll come back to that story at some point in the future.
Well, that's so listeners, that is the one thing that is the problem that has caused all the problems in my entire life, is the belief that I have the control over the universe in ways that I just flat don't.
Yeah, well, applying more force obviously won't get you to cancel your cable faster.
And I kept...
All right.
Yeah, I was applying a lot of force too, Ben.
So I was on Reddit, I think, and this video popped up that was from the television series Scrubs. It was towards the end when they'd all gone to the beach, and all the characters were there together in all their romantic pairings, and Ted was playing a slow ukulele version of Hey Ya by Outkast.
Okay.
And it's funny how that song becomes kind of a romantic ballad when you play it like that. And when you hear it, it kind of reminds you of how, even though the actor Sam Lloyd that plays Ted plays this kind of hapless lawyer, he also kind of has the secret abilities. And I dug it, and I was like, I wonder why that popped up on my feed. And then a few hours later, I saw that he had died at age 56 of cancer. I was like, oh, that was really sad.
Poor Ted.
Ted died.
Are you going to tie this into our conversation, or is this just out of the blue?
Yeah, no, I'm going to tie this into our conversation because I wanted to do this as a teaser for next time. So I've been thinking about on the show, I know you and I both love the series Scrubs for different reasons. And I haven't watched it in a while, and I'm thinking I want to do something with it on the show. And I've been trying to think what we could do with Scrubs.
Oh, we have a Scrub quote off. That's what we could do.
Yeah. Well, you'd win that. That's like playing Boggle against my wife. I'm going to get trashed every time. But what I arrived at, and I'll get your approval on, and we'll invite the listeners to participate in, is in honor of Sam Lloyd, who died of cancer at age 56. I think for next time, let's both come back with our favorite episode with Ted in it.
Our favorite episode of Scrubs that included
everyone's favorite sad sack hospital lawyer.
I think my favorite...
Maybe we could share a couple of clips or something.
I could tell you my favorite. Like, I don't know if it's my favorite episode. My favorite quote from Ted that I quote all the time was when Dr. Kelso said something, and then he looked like, right, Ted? And Ted goes, yes, no, sir, I'm barely here.
And you say that?
I say that sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. I always think of Ted just like going into an utter panic and a flop sweat anytime someone asks a legal question, like he isn't the lawyer in the room.
How's that law degree working out, Ted? I was going to be a senator. All right, so that's what we're going to do. Is, and honestly, that's not bad. People, if you haven't seen Scrubs, I challenge you to go watch a couple episodes. Not season 1. Oh, Lord, not season 1. They didn't think they were going to get a season 1, so go watch something from like, what do you think, season 3 or 4?
Yeah. I guess I'm not aware of what you're talking about. The problem with season 1.
Oh, so just all the things that happen with new TV shows. If you ever watch TV shows, they go through a little life cycle where you watch any series from start to finish. The first season's a little rocky. They're still trying to feel out the characters. There's a lot of...
Yeah, find out what the important thing is.
Yeah, and like characters act a little differently than they normally would. Plus the budget is a lot lower, so like some of the the polish isn't quite there. the second, third, and fourth season, usually they hit their stride. Everybody's clicking, and then like the writers have figured out the puzzle, and then at the end, like you can tell, like when a show jumps the shark, you can feel the decline.
Yeah.
You can feel it start going down where like the writers are running out of space. Maybe some of the main actors leave because they see the writing on the wall. Like this isn't going to last any longer. So
I don't have the patience for that. I never make it to the shark jumping part. I fall out long before that. One that I can think of that followed that pattern was Extreme Makeover Home Edition. I remember we bought that on DVD, and I remember watching the first season and about... Yeah. I'll tell you. Like, they didn't know what they were trying to do. Like, the first 4 episodes, it was just at the height of the, like, reality TV show craze. And reality TV shows all follow this very familiar pattern of you have a bunch of characters, and you throw them in a pressure cooker, and little dramas break out between the characters, and that's what drives the show forward. It's the drama between the characters.
Right.
And at some point, after about, like, the 4th or 5th episode, they realized that tension between the characters, because they're on this compressed building schedule, was not why people were tuning into the show. It was the stories of the lives of the people they'd chosen to help. And then you see, if you watch that first season, you see that utterly and completely melt into the background. There's no more like cat fighting between the designer and the builder. It's all focused on the life story of the person whose house we're remodeling. And that's when that show really found its stride.
Huh. That is interesting. I have nothing else to say.
But it really stands out when you go back and watch like the first 3 episodes, if you've seen any other episode. And I'm like, he told me to hurry up and build this thing. I can't believe he talked to me like that.
That's funny. Well, Scrubs goes through that same life cycle where they don't really know what's going on in the first season. Here's a fun thing about Scrubs you may not realize. If you watch the first season again, they didn't know if they were going to get a second season. And there was this cliffhanger that they had built into the show from episode 1 all the way through the first season, was that the janitor never interacts with anybody else in the hospital the entire first season. And their idea was that if they did not get a second season, the last episode, the series finale for season 1, they would have revealed that the janitor was actually one of JD's figments the entire time.
Huh. Like the Sixth Sense.
Yeah, like that. Like a cool twist over the course of the entire show.
Interesting. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end. That's our teaser for next time. So, listeners, if you'd like to chime in on Facebook or Reddit and tell what your favorite episode with Sam Lloyd, Ted, in it was in honor of him who died this week. I'll put a link in the show notes to a little video he recorded right before he died. He was just in a hospital room dying of cancer, and he just said some affirming and inspiring things to people that were listening. And I think it's right to take when there's someone like that we spend a good portion of our life with, looking at and consuming the art that they produced, and we like it, and then they depart a little too early. It's poignant. You feel like you lost a friend even though we never knew each other, and that's kind of how I felt when I found out Ted died.
Oh, well, and on the lighter side of things, that felt really heavy. I'm going to lighten things up. We would love to see your favorite Scrubs memes, because I don't know if enough of those exist on the internet.
Yes.
So post some of that stuff too. We like that.
Okay.
You going to do it?
That's it, man. That's all I got.
Well, then I'm going to go through the whole thing. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We love all of our listeners. We appreciate you downloading and consuming our ridiculous content every week. Please like us on whatever social media platform that you exist on. Go give us a review on any of your favorite podcast podcast download apps. If you want to join in the discussion, we have a very active Facebook page that Ben is so kind to take care of. We have good discussions on the Reddit, so you can go there. Links to those will be in the show notes. If you really appreciate everything that we do and you have the disposable income during these hard times, we would love it if you would go on to Patreon and show us a little love there. We will continue to make this with or without that. We just appreciate any love that we can get wherever. Also, don't forget about the Bat at Magic Live Fitness Challenge that is currently ongoing through the summertime, trying to stay in shape during these difficult couch potato-y times that we currently live in. Go to batatmagic.live. There is a link to the fitness challenge up top. It is all completely anonymous. You just put in a username. It shows changes in your body weight from week to week, and there may be prizes at the end for whoever loses. We should also have prizes for whoever gains the most, but like a bad prize. Like it should be a bad prize, so it doesn't encourage people to actually gain the most weight. But
I think it should have the president's autograph on it. I just got an example in the mail.
Yes, something that our dear president would have signed, saying how they're just the greatest, the best ever.